Peggy knew that name. He won a gold medal in one Olympics and a silver medal in another Olympics in the shot put. He was, if you had been here last night, you would have noticed him walk in because he's 6'8", 250 pounds, and still looks like he could throw the shot put. But he married Margaret Burns, and that was the way we even got to know him, was because she went to ACU, and she was a cheerleader here at ACU when Sylvia and I were in school. But she had this boyfriend from Pampa. Was it Pampa? I think it was Pampa. And he would come up and see her from A&M, which is where he was going to school. So that's a little, I didn't mean to get into all of that, but you get started and then you say, well, how did you know him? And it leads down a trail. But anyway, the other thing I'm going to say is you never know. Kevin pointed out at the beginning of the service, June, that the way that all started was Jill had been teaching a class over in the College of Business, and her student assistant was an ACU student whose daughter was Catherine Babb. And she came to ACU, and so it sort of all started with Catherine Babb coming to University Church because her mother knew Jill and said, you come here. And then Jill saw Kevin and said, go meet that girl over here. She's a freshman in college, and we want her to come here. And she did. And so you never know. The ripple effect just keeps rippling, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, well, it's good to see all of you here this morning. And Kevin, will you lead us in prayer? And then following the prayer, good morning. Y'all know this guy?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
This is a good guy.
Good morning.
If you've ever taken anything to Christian Service Center, you've seen this guy. And he's always so pleasant and so happy and always good to see you. Thanks for coming and being with us this morning. All right, Kevin.
Our Father in heaven, it seems that almost every week and sometimes every other day we designate a day or days throughout the year to serve as a holiday, a reminder, a celebration of some famous person or famous event that has meaning for us. This past Friday was the longest day of the year and the beginning of summer. The day before that, we celebrated the news of the end of slavery when it came to Texas. 9 days ago was a day that we paid homage to our nation's flag. Of course, this past Lord's Day, we were told it was Father's Day, during which we pay tribute to our earthly fathers. But we can't think about fathers on a Lord's Day without an acknowledgement of you, the Father. Lord, you are the creator of all life and all things. You're the supreme being, literally. You are the Father of the universe. And yet your eye is on the sparrow, and you acknowledge and you watch over each of the 8.5 billion of us, as you have watched over each of our ancestors, all the way back to Adam, the first of your mortal children and the first mortal father. In a way, you're also our adopted Father, as we have been adopted into your family through our faith in your Son, Jesus Christ. It was Jesus who modeled the most famous prayer of all time, the Lord's Prayer, which itself begins by speaking of our Father who art in heaven. Jesus the Christ, consistently addresses you as Father and instructs us to do the same. You are the Alpha and the Omega. You are our provider, our caregiver, and when necessary, our disciplinarian, as any good father must be at times. Thus, it is in the spirit of humility, gratitude, and love that we call directly upon you, our Heavenly Father, and we praise you. We thank you today for that privilege. We've also been called upon to pray for those in our midst, those in our nation and those in the world. So we do a collective prayer, thanking you for our existence and asking you to be with everyone in the midst of wars that spring up again and again and again all over the world. Please help there be peace. Please help those who are sick, injured, wounded, alone. Please help them find comfort, solace, and healing. All these things we pray in the name of your most holy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. All right, here we are again. Let me try to get situated here. Okay, last time we began 1 Timothy 2 and had ambitions to get through it and did not. So we're going to pick up there, and I think we'll get through it today. That's what he said last week. It's what I say every week. We'll aim to get to the end of chapter 2. It's not long, it's only 15 verses, but it's a challenging text, and there are a couple of points that Paul makes here that are real head scratchers. What's he saying? What's he saying here? Then the question is, what's it mean for us? But what's he saying? That's a challenge. My goal is still to move through 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus by the end of the summer. And I know that we're staring down July before long. Will we be able to do that? I think we will. We'll certainly try. Again, I don't know what's on the horizon next, and I don't know when we'll start. But I'm thinking at some point the congregation will do something together, probably mid-August, as is our usual habit. And so I'll try to get us as far as we can, but I don't want to continue too much further into the fall study, whatever that is, because I think it's important that we stay on track with everyone else. Having said that, in 1 Timothy 2, we're moving into the body of the letter. I pointed out last time a couple markers of the flow of thought. Verse 1, first of all, and verse 8, therefore. The first of all could be first in a sequence, and he just doesn't number the others. So if we read through, there's not going to be and a second, and third, and fourth, and fifth. Okay. It may be first in importance. And we don't need to look for number 2. We just need to say, okay, right off the bat, first of all, whatever happens in verse 8 and following is a therefore that comes on the heels of that first paragraph. Okay? And I was trying, I'm never satisfied with, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm never satisfied. And I don't think I was articulate enough, at least not satisfy myself, talking last week about exegesis and hermeneutics. Those words are big words, and all they mean, exegesis, it just means to draw out. You may have heard that term. We'll talk about that term every so often. Bradley may drop it in here or there. I think I've dropped it in here or there as we teach, to draw out. You may have heard the word hermeneutic or hermeneutics, to interpret. Both of these are English words that come out of Greek when we give the English equivalent to a Greek letter and create a new English word. The word baptism is the same thing. It is an English equivalent to Greek letters, and we have created a new English word. If we were to translate it, baptizo, and translate it as immerse, but we've created a new word. So if we were to transliterate, we would just transfer the letters, which is what we've done, okay? So first, exegesis is to just draw out what we have here. The primary question here is, what does this text say? And at this point, we ask questions like vocabulary, grammar, maybe the backgrounds, maybe the context, lots of factors. As I've been going through Mark and now of Timothy, that's my primary goal, is to exegete or to draw out what we have here. On the heels of that is to apply. Okay, so by pointing out the first of all and the therefores and the grammatical structures and the kind of the signal words that signal argument, persuasion, what's his train of thought, all of that is aimed at drawing out what Paul has here. All right. In doing that, we encounter some questions like, what's this mean? What is he saying? We get into the paragraph of verse 8 through 15, and I think everyone has it, but I gave a handout last week. I don't know if you need one. I'll be happy to give one to you. If you need another one, I'll be happy to give you another one. The illustrations here, I think, are helpful, and the way that Chris discusses the details pictured in these pictures is helpful to draw out what does Paul say about adornment, or however, apparel, appearance, demeanor. What is proper? Verse 10. The way the men were acting was improper. They were arguing and disputing. And the way the women were dressing was improper. So what does proper mean? And we didn't really talk about this handout last time. We ran out of time. Now I realize I've copied a page out of a book, and you don't have the preceding page, and you don't have the next chapter. All you have is what you have here. So I realize that's a bit of a trick, okay? I think it will kind of stand on its own. That paragraph that begins on the left side of the page, the instruction in 2 verses 9 and 10 aims at people of relatively high status. And he goes through, I'm not going to read it to you, the names and the dates in parentheses. That's his way of citing his sources. Huizinga, 2011, page 266. Okay. Petronius, the Satyricon, that's an ancient source. Thomson, 1988. Okay. That's him citing his sources. And I realize we don't have the sources at the bottom of the page. I'd rather have footnotes. Okay. This helpfully describes the pictures which show some of the things mentioned in this passage. Hairstyles, gold, pearls, expensive apparel. Okay. We have a drawing and a sculpture. We have two examples of women dressed in two different kinds of ways. And as Chris describes here, we have good illustrations of what he says the competing attitudes towards women's dress. On the one hand is one, on the other hand is the other. Okay? It's intended to convey something. It's intended to make an impression. On the second page, the right-hand side, there's that middle paragraph. Respectable Roman women appeared in public flaunting wealth or flaunting virtue. It wants to convey something. Of course, that's kind of true with how we carry ourselves. It's not the property of Romans. We carry ourselves and project an image or want to declare an image. We've all had teenagers. I make all kinds of jokes about, my favorite is the jeans with the holes in them. And my standard line is, do you pay extra for the holes? Is that just part of it? Is that a package deal? Is that a bonus? This edges you up in the social ladder, right? To have the best holes in your jeans. Or that's what I'll say. Oh my, the holes in your jeans are spectacular. Congratulations. So that's how I'll spin that. You want to project something. How you dress, how you carry yourself. It's all kind of part of the package of what you're trying to convey. It has meaning, and it has meaning in a context, which then is the second part of my standard line of like, well, I have holes in my jeans, the ones that I mow in, but no one's complimenting me on that. I don't get any social points for going out in public with those jeans on. I don't understand. Why am I not the cool kid at the lunch table? Okay? So it carries meaning in a context, in a cultural or a social context. Okay? Given those choices, Pastoral Paul, Chris says here, urged that Christian values were in line with the Roman rhetoric of modesty, but not the Roman practice of status competition. Okay, so the way that you can kind of carry yourself, kind of as a whole package, could detract from the credibility of the message or could enhance the credibility of the message. Okay, and he discusses this and goes through. I thought that's helpful. I really thought the pictures were helpful because you can see the gold, the hair, the necklaces on the one hand, and then the utter absence of the other one. Just a simple robe, okay? Flaunting wealth on the one hand, flaunting virtue on the other, okay? Paul's argument here is there is propriety that comes along with how you convey or conduct yourself that ought to emerge from your profession. So for verse 10, the propriety and your profession should align. Okay? Again, it's difficult for us to understand what's proper. That's part of exegesis, is to draw out what does Paul say. That's why the handout. Okay? Now, verse 12, verse 11, he makes another or an additional argument, instruction, and he argues from Scripture. So this is not what's proper. What does proper mean? Okay, good question. It's not a propriety argument. It looks like he extends that, the instruction, and then makes a biblical argument. Okay? Well, verse 11. A woman is to learn quietly and with full submission. I do not allow a woman to teach or have authority over a man. Instead, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and transgressed. But she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with good sense. This saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to be an overseer, and on he goes. So our chapter division looks like it follows with a train of thought division. Okay, not totally different, but he's moving on to something else. Okay, so we want to exegete this. We want to draw out the meaning. Just as I'm kind of thinking out loud and observing, what I observe, number one, is this is brief. 3, 4 sentences, 5 sentences. This is brief. Okay? It's brief. We may wish for more. We don't get more. What we have is what we have. Okay? He doesn't go into a long biblical argument. He makes a statement and moves on. Okay. I raised the question last time, and I still don't know, but I wonder, a woman is to learn with full submission, quietly and with full submission. To whom? Okay, that's a question interpreters have tried to wrestle with and answer. I don't think our versions will translate in verse 12 anything other than a man. I think our English versions will always translate that a man. Some have, again, trying to interpret this, have thought maybe, and part of this is the Greek terms for man and husband is the same term, and the context will shade the meaning and give you the specificity to say which man, the one you're married to. Okay, that's your man. A one-woman man or a one-man woman. Okay, I worked in a former life. I worked in a grocery store. I was a manager of a grocery store, with not a hint of irony. Not one hint. There was no, he did this all the time. And I first thought he's joking. And then I realized, no, this is just how it is. He's younger than me. Now, granted, I was 23. Without a hint of irony, one of my co-managers, I was number 5 of 5. So I was on the bottom rung of management. Number 4. He was right ahead of me. He was younger than me, but he was number 4. I was 23. We'd just gotten married, 22. He'd been married 3 or 4 years, had a little boy and one on the way. And he called his wife my old lady. A throwback, like to a 50s sitcom, like the Honeymooners or something. My old lady. No irony, and she called him my old man. Okay? So who's your man? Like the one you're married to. Okay? I can see him, red hair, mustache. Oh. And it wasn't bad. Oh, my old lady's going to bring me lunch today. Like, oh. I was counting money. I was doing checks, counting money up in the office. My old lady's going to bring me lunch today. Like, oh, okay. Sure enough, here she comes, little boy, drags in, brings Dad lunch. It was sweet. I just scratched my head and I went, I wonder why that? Yeah. Okay. So the man, submission to whom? Her husband? Any man? We're talking about kind of church here. So is this submission to the leadership of the church? Okay. To the elders. Okay, so that's a question. I have a question. I'm not sure I know the answer, but those are commonly suggested alternatives to best understand who's the man over whom she should not have authority. Their husband? Some guy walking down the sidewalk? The leaders of the church. Okay, there may be other options, but those seem to be the big options. Okay. Now, for Adam was formed first, then Eve. Oh, sorry, I did point this out last week. The quiet of verse 12 and the quiet of verse 2, there's your quiet. The same quiet. Whatever the quiet is here is the same quiet, appears to be, up above in verse 2. Okay, I don't know what version you have. Our Pew Bible translates it as quiet in both places. And I don't recall off the top of my head if the versions that render this in verse 12 silent, I don't think they do. If there is one, it's not immediately coming to mind, and I should have looked at all of my English versions, but they're at the office, okay? The quiet of verse 2 tends to get translated quiet, but sometimes the quiet of verse 12 is translated silent. Women should be silent, okay? Well, I think we should observe the quiet is the same quiet in both places. And so Paul doesn't if it's silent, no sound, why would we not translate that silent up in verse 2? So we could lead a silent life. Okay, we kind of think, well, that doesn't seem to be the implication. And again, I realize that there's lots more teaching that we could do on this topic. We haven't even looked at 1 Corinthians, okay? What's it mean to be silent or quiet? Okay. Well, whatever it means, it's in line. It seems to me to be in line with the other usage of the same term, not 10 verses ahead or up the line, back before. Okay. So I don't know that silent is a preferable translation. I think our Pew Bible is helpful here in rendering them both the same. What's it mean? That's the second question. That's a good question. What does it mean? I'm going to try to unpack that. Okay. What's he say? Well, he says the same thing in both places. Okay. So just observe that. Adam was formed first, then Eve. Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and transgressed. Like I said, this is brief. So what does he say? Well, when I taught high school kids, and I did this for us when we looked at Mark. When you're looking at narrative, there's all kinds of things that could be said. But what was said seems to have been said for a reason. And I always went to that passage, of the things that Jesus did, all the books in the world could not contain them. That was a favorite hook that the kids would have known. Like, there's lots of things that the gospel writers could have told us, but what they do tell us seems to be for a reason. And they always kind of nodded and went, aha, I thought about it like that, yeah. Okay, so of all the things to pull out of Genesis, let's just observe what he does. There is a sequence. Adam first, then Eve. Okay, well, there's really only two statements. And the one is about sequence and the other is about deception. Okay, Adam was formed first, then Eve. So the order or sequence is what Paul makes a point about. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived. And that's his second point. And that's all he does. Again, I've already said it's brief. So he makes 2 points. One is a sequence point, and one is Adam was not deceived, the woman was deceived. Okay? And that's his argument. That's the ground for his point here. And she'll be saved through childbearing. Okay. Oh, I think it's like he anticipates an objection or a second thing that might bubble up. But she'll be saved through childbearing. Okay. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I may as well ask, who's the she of verse 15? Is it Eve? Is it the woman? Any woman? the woman who wears the gold and the pearls and the hair, okay? Is it that woman or women? Is it Eve? Is it kind of the man on the street, the woman on the street? Women, kind of vague, nameless, faceless, just kind of everybody, okay? Who's the she? Okay, who's the they? While we're there, look at verse 15. If they continue, she'll be saved if they continue. Our Pew Bibles, I think, are pretty good in translating. The Greek is not terribly clear here, so we need to think grammatically which objects and the subjects go together and why is the participle dangling and all those grammatical questions. So who's this referring to in the sentence? In the sentence, who's the she? In the sentence, who's the they? Good questions. Okay, just pointing that out. Well, okay, let me read a couple things. I probably could have made a handout, but let me just read a couple quotes here from some ancient Jewish sources. It looks like, well, first thing, it looks like, if you look at 1 Timothy 1, verse 4, he makes a comparison, kind of a comparison. He joins a couple things in the sentence, and they kind of are two, but they function as one. And it looks like he does the same grammatical thing. That's a technical term, thing. Mrs. Halsey, my 6th grade English teacher, would not be pleased that I just did that, called a grammatical thing a thing. The grammatical construction, okay, looks like in verse 4, pay attention to myths and endless genealogies. There's a grammatical thing going on here where there are two things, they function together. Myths and endless genealogies. Are we looking for two different things? Well, we're looking for two things. Are they different? No, not really, because they're going to function together. Frick and frack, they're pair. They go together. Tweedledee and the other guy, okay? I don't allow a woman to teach or have authority. Two things or one thing? Yes. They're two things. They function together. Okay? That seems to be what we have here. Okay. Well, Jewish, again, these are Jews from the 1st, 2nd century BC in the books that we would call the Apocrypha. Okay? Will sometimes make points about Adam and Eve or comments. And it seems to be that illustrates how folks were thinking about those stories and using them. Okay? We could call this one of the contexts for what Paul says here. So when Paul makes an argument and kind of draws up a biblical statement from Genesis, and in the course of making his argument, he's not alone in doing that. Others have done that. Other Jews have done that. And there are a couple places where those happen. In one case, or in some cases, the emphasis is on Adam. In other places, the emphasis is on Eve. And in the third one, the emphasis is on neither Adam nor Eve, it's on the devil, the serpent. Okay. Sirach, 25-24. I should have made a handout. Probably ought to do that. Okay, so you could, if you have a Bible at home with the Apocrypha, you can read these. Okay, Sirach, S-I-R-A-C-H. From a woman, sin had its beginning, and because of her, we all die. And on that goes. Okay. 4th Maccabees, 18. It looks like a kind of a meditation on wisdom, or its instruction. I guarded, this is kind of, it's like a woman or a mother or a grandmother teaching her children. I guarded the rib. And I was not seduced or tempted. Kind of a play off the creation story. I was created out of a rib, and I guarded the rib. That's kind of very vivid imagery of kind of I kept what was entrusted to me. I was not seduced or tempted. So it kind of reminds you of Proverbs as I read it. Look at 2 Corinthians. That's not Apocrypha, that's just Paul. 2 Corinthians 11. Verse 3. I fear that, as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, your minds may be seduced from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ. And on he goes. Again, all the good boys and girls who paid attention in Sunday school go, oh, Eve, yeah, the deception. I should be careful. You're right. And on we go, okay? We don't really spend a lot of time there. We don't linger. We just draw it up and move on, okay? Sometimes they emphasize Adam. Look at Romans. Paul will do this. We'll go to Romans 5. There's a whole paragraph that we won't read, but Romans 5, around verse 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, that whole section. Okay, Romans 5:14. Death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who did not sin in the likeness of Adam's transgression. He is a type of the coming one, but the gift is not like the trespass. And on he goes, making a comparison, contrast, but he's drawing on Adam's sin. So just like in 2 Corinthians, didn't mention Adam, here doesn't mention Eve. He's going back to the story. And again, all the boys and girls who paid attention in Sunday school go, oh, Adam's sin. Got it. Yes, on we go. Okay. 4th Ezra. You didn't know there was more than one. Esdras, additions to Ezra. Okay. Sometimes called Esdras, E-S-D-R-A-S. The first man, Adam, was burdened with a wicked heart. He sinned, and not only he, but all his descendants. So the author there makes a similar point. Adam sinned, and everybody else. He was the first, and everyone kind of hopped on the train and went right along with him. Okay? That's the point. That's 2nd or 4th Ezra. How about the serpent? The wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2. For God created man incorruptible, and in the image of his own likeness he made him. But by the envy of the devil, death came into the world. So the writer of that document is emphasizing it is that sneaky devil who got us in this mess. We were created in the image of God, and it is the devil who deceives. No mention of Adam, no mention of Eve. Okay. What do I mean by all of that? Well, writers using these biblical texts have emphasized various facets of them. And this is one of a handful of places where, again, this is Jewish because we're dealing with Genesis. We're dealing with Jewish. It makes no sense for Greeks and Romans to do this because what do they care about Genesis, right? Okay. So the point that Paul's bringing, he's going back to our origin story. Point is sequence, and point is deception. Okay. Who is the childbearing? Who is the she? That's a good question. Is it Eve? That seems to be, grammatically, that's the closest thing handy to reach to and grab. Okay? If we were going to look for an antecedent, grammatically, we'd have to reach past Eve to get to someone else because she's closest. Okay? Kind of like you have a whole house full of kids and they're all running loose. And you don't know who's the instigator, but you just grab the first one that goes by. All right? I got you. Make an example of you. Okay? Is the she Eve? Okay? Is the she the women? Is the she woman? Okay? Who is the they? I really don't know who. And there's a lot of people that don't know that, but try a lot. Books have been written on this. I mean, this is the stuff that folks write dissertations on. And they dissertate on and on and on. Will I solve it in one Sunday school class? Of course not. Not when it's now already 9:45. I did run across one I didn't really think of, but Gnosticism. There's a question whether or not the Gnosticism that we see pretty clearly in the 2nd century was as developed as it was and as widespread as it was in the 1st century. In other words, you kind of need some time for a false teaching to get ahead of steam and spread. Did it have enough time to do that, to get what we call and know as Gnosticism that the Christian writers of the 2nd century describe back in the 1st, 100 years earlier? That's a good question. And some say, probably not. Others say, I don't know. Okay? Well, one facet of this Gnosticism, you remember a couple weeks ago I talked about the party Gnostics? When you have a view of the flesh, that the flesh is totally beyond redemption and just a lost cause. Some Gnostics would indulge the flesh because, after all, it's only the flesh. It's your body. The body will do what the body will do. I'm sorry, officer. I'm a human. What can I say? Okay? Okay? The party Gnostics. You don't want to live next door to these guys because it's something all the time. And there were some, these are Christian Gnostics, who said, indulge the flesh because it is the flesh. Okay, in other words, you can get some psychological relief. I know there's kind of some angst here, and just kind of get over it and do what you want. Okay? The other Gnostics would say you should restrain the flesh. And there was a strand of teaching that would have encouraged celibacy and would have encouraged and discouraged all the kind of things that happen when you're human. So there's dietary restrictions that may be behind the dietary restrictions that we have here in Timothy. It may be behind the marriage, verse 4, chapter 4, verse 3, forbidding marriage and demand abstinence from foods. There's a strand within Gnosticism that said what will ultimately happen is the humanity will all become not quite androgynous, but a single gender, male. And that what you should kind of try to avoid is all of the things about your flesh that kind of make you flesh, and that would include discouraging childbearing. Because there's hardly anything more fleshy than creating new humans in flesh. And so the childbearing, for some Gnostics, would have been a real problem. Is that behind Paul's argument here that says the way things are is good, and the way you function as a woman is not something to avoid and get away from? That is part of how it goes, and in fact, you'll be saved through that. I realize it's now almost 10 till and have tried to solve the saved through childbearing question in 5 minutes. Hopeless ambition, I know. It's a real head scratcher, this section of Paul, and time is running out. Let's move on. If you have an outline, read on into chapter 3, and we'll pick up there next time. Thanks so much. And again, I owe you about 5 minutes.